This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The United Nations warns of humanitarian disaster in Ethiopia as thousands flee to Sudan. COVID-19 hospitalizations in the U.S. soar to a record high of more than 60,000 a day. And how artists in the Central African Republic are keeping traditional music alive in a challenging environment. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Also coming up this hour, Egypt's foreign currency reserves hit $39.2 billion in October. And in sports, Kenya quietly confident of upstaging Group G leaders Comoros in their 2021 AFCON qualifiers clash in Nairobi. United Nations is warning of a humanitarian disaster in Ethiopia. A week of fighting in the northern Tigray region has forced thousands of people to flee to neighboring countries, including Sudan, which sealed its border. Still, it and Kenya hope to bring the two sides to the negotiating table. Hundreds have died in airstrikes and fighting in Ethiopia, raising fears the country could slide into a civil war. U.S. President Donald Trump has again insisted, without providing evidence, there was voter fraud in the presidential election. His party leaders are backing his refusal to concede to Joe Biden, but Biden is calling it an embarrassment and is moving ahead with plans for the transition. Our White House correspondent Nathan King has the details.
Well, as you can see behind me, the White House is digging in. They're doing some gardening, but it's a good metaphor for essentially what the Trump campaign are doing. Even though we haven't seen the president for a while, he continues to tweet. Let me just read you his latest. Ballot counting abuse. That was flagged by Twitter as untrue. And essentially, there's a big question here. Is what the president is doing in his campaign through all these legal challenges and questioning the veracity of the vote just a media play to keep his supporters on side, some sort of post-presidential power play, or is it something more sinister? And we don't really have the answer to that. What we do know is there has been a move on the side of Republicans and agencies of the federal government to essentially back up these claims. Let me read you part of a Department of Justice release from the Attorney General, Bill Barr, in the last 24 hours. And it says, given the voting in our current elections has now concluded, I authorize you to pursue substantial allegations of voting fraud and tabulation irregularities prior to the certification of elections in your jurisdictions. That essentially gives the green light for Department of Justice officials to look into any allegations of election fraud. Now, there are qualifiers later in that press release about frivolous lawsuits, etc. But I can tell you the effect is quite heavy. A Department of Justice official in charge of election fraud has essentially resigned his post to move to another position, and there is so much eyebrow raising about it. And I can tell you this comes as, of course, the Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, was fired in the past 24 hours. Lots of talk about others perhaps being fired. And also the Republican leadership in the Senate doubling down, supporting the president. Even Mitch McConnell saying the president is within his rights to challenge the electoral results, all the way up to the Electoral College certification of results in Congress in January the 6th. Now, that is a very, very wide margin to give the president, considering normally the transfer of power starts within minutes of a concession, but that is not coming. Also, perhaps even more worrying is the fact that we have heard from Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who essentially said, and this is quite incredible, that a transition will happen, but not to Joe Biden, but to a second term of a Trump administration.
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. Right? We're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly.
Now, I want to remind you, this is the chief diplomat of the United States saying this, essentially sending the message around the world.
Even as Trump refuses to concede, Biden says nothing will stop the transfer of power. Jagruti Davi has more from Washington.
Joe Biden has been saying that the transition process that he has launched is underway, and that President Trump's and many Republicans' refusal to acknowledge his victory is not getting in the way of that. On President Trump's refusal to concede the election, this is what he had to say.
Well, I just think it's an embarrassment, quite frankly. The only thing that, how can I say this tactfully? I think it will not help the president's legacy.
But the Biden-Harris transition team is still facing obstacles. One of those is the fact that a Trump appointee at the General Services Administration, a government department, still hasn't signed a letter that effectively begins the transition process. It would allow the Biden-Harris team access to funding and to resources that they're currently working without.
Burkina Faso President Roch-Marc Christian Kabore is hitting the campaign trail ahead of the presidential poll. The country is set to hold its general election on November 22nd. Kabore is seeking a second term. He is facing off against 12 other candidates. His first term has been plagued by both terror attacks and the rise of intercommunal violence. Addressing his supporters, Kabore spoke about the attacks the country has faced, saying Burkinabés will never bow to terrorists.
We must avoid stigmatization and retreating into our own cultures. I say this because terrorism is not created by a community. People who carry out terrorism can be found in all communities of Burkina Faso.
All right, let's revisit our top story, where the United Nations is warning of a humanitarian disaster in Ethiopia. A week of fighting in the northern Tigray region has forced thousands of people to flee to neighboring countries, including Sudan, which sealed its border. Still, it and Kenya hope to bring the two sides to the negotiating table. Hundreds have died in airstrikes and fighting in Ethiopia, raising fears the country could slide into a civil war. Let's now get more details from CGTN's Girum Chala live for us from Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. Girum, what's the latest on the fighting?
Peninah, the confrontation in the northern Ethiopia, Tigray regional state between the Ethiopian National Defense Forces, alongside the Amhara Special Force, against the Tigray regional state special force and militia is now more than a week old, and confrontations have continued. We have heard of at least 6 battlefields have been created in different directions, one bordering the Afar regional state, one bordering Sudan, the other one bordering the Amhara regional state, where originally the fighting has started, and also from the Eritrea side, the National Defense Force Northern Command is attacking different locations. We also know that in Aksum, for our audience to put some context into it, is where the obelisk of Aksum, one of the tangible cultural heritage of Ethiopia, registered by UNESCO, is found. There is heavy fighting going on by the National Defense Force and the TPLF's Special Force to control the airport. That's what we are hearing. As we've been saying so far, communication is totally off in that area. There is no way that you can make a phone call, or there's no internet connection. The only information we get is from the government side, and also some social media posts being made by the Tigray Regional State's party or communication offices, Peninah. So far, what we know is that heavy fighting has continued. The government is interested to finish the job within 7 to 10 days time, bringing back lawfulness and bring those behind it, the perpetrators, as they call them, into justice. The Tigray Regional State says it will never fall and it will win this war. So things are getting serious every single day that is passing.
Okay,
but Abiy Ahmed's government is adamant that this war will be concluded soon.
All right, so talk to us about the humanitarian situation, because the UN is warning that it is spiraling out of control. Thousands reportedly crossing into neighboring Sudan. What's the situation like?
Well, Sudan has reported an estimated of 200,000 people could be crossing into its borders. Those include soldiers, militia members, and ordinary citizens fearing for their lives due to the ongoing conflict there. And Sudanese authorities are also saying that they are still providing the basic necessities of these Ethiopian evicted people due to the war going on in the north. So that's what we know so far. So many people crossing the border. At the same time, Sudanese Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok has called for peace and dialogue to begin, as he is the chairperson of IGAD, the regional authority itself. So many people are, yes, crossing the borders. They are being sheltered by Sudanese authorities, Peninah.
Okay, the government on Tuesday set conditions for peace talks with the Tigray region leadership. What's been the reaction to that?
Well, first of all, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed on his Twitter account, and also one of the spokespersons of the state of emergency in the Tigray regional state, also is the State Minister of Foreign Affairs Redwan Hussein, yesterday, have repeated these three preconditions. One is returning lawfulness to that area, and the second one is bringing perpetrators into justice, and the third one is forming a transitional administration which replaces the now Tigray regional state administration. If these three preconditions are fulfilled, then Abiy Ahmed's government is saying that it will return to the negotiating table. But to do that, the war should be over, and it's not going to be over through negotiations. It should be over through the ongoing fightings. And the Prime Minister's comments are also gaining some kind of momentum here. The people here in Addis Ababa we spoke to are saying that, yes, justice should be served because of the atrocities committed against the National Defense Force, as their barracks were attacked by the TPLF special forces. TPLF, on the other side, we have heard from their social media posts saying that there is no way that they are going to lose the war, and negotiation should be given a chance. They agree, but then again, the war should be over first. So these are two conflicting positions, but we have to wait and see again in the coming few days if which one is going to hold water. But the AU wants negotiation to start. The Ethiopian government doesn't support that, really.
All right, Gurum, thank you for that update. Gurum Chala live in Addis Ababa. Meanwhile, the United Nations is hosting a round of talks on the Libyan conflict in Tunisia. The meeting aims to appoint an interim government which will be tasked with preparing for elections. The UN has said the transition period should not exceed 18 months. Criticism has already emerged surrounding the selection of delegates to attend the talks. A council representing the country's Tuareg minority as well as a pro-GNA armed group are among those condemning the selection process. Tunisian President Kais Saied, in a press conference, urged the delegates to remain unified. Libyan joint military talks are also going on in the Libyan city of Sirte. The meeting is being held alongside the Libya Political Forum that is underway in Tunisia. The UN is managing both talks. Here's Adel Mahri with more details.
In Tunisia, the United Nations has begun talks focusing on Libya's political roadmap, eyeing an agreement over comprehensive election. During the same time, parallel military negotiations are taking place in Sirte, in the central coastal region in Libya.
The international community used to think that the crisis in Libya is political. It appears now they realize the military aspect is the priority. I don't think the political dialogue in Tunisia would find any obstacles as long as the military crisis is getting resolved.
The United Nations support mission in Libya says the prime target for the military talks is to implement the ceasefire agreement reached on October 23. This is a decisive week for the country's future.
All news coming from Tunisia indicates that a political agreement is near. There is a solution on the table. To do that, we need to implement the military agreement. That is to evacuate all Turkish and foreign fighters and fight terrorism. These were the points standing in the way of any agreement.
During this joint military commission negotiations, Libyans should draft a detailed and timed plan to evacuate foreign fighters and set deadlines for prisoners exchange. Heavy artillery and troops spread around Sirte and other Libyan cities should gradually withdraw in preparations to turn Sirte into a buffer zone.
The entire process is designed to hand over the security responsibilities of Sirte to a joint police task force. That is to ensure Sirte's independence from the influence of any Libyan faction, in preparations to make the city the transitional capital for Libya. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a quick break. Coming up. COVID-19 hospitalizations in the U.S. soar to a record high of more than 60,000 a day. And African countries participate in COVID-19 vaccine trials.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis,
Syria,
Juba, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
Welcome back. At least 17 people have died from an unknown illness in Nigeria's north-central state of Benue. The government says it is investigating the cause of the illness and working to bring the situation under control. Our correspondent Philly Haza has more on this.
The confirmation of the reported deaths and illness was made by the Benue State's Commissioner for Health, Dr. Emmanuel Ikolono. He says most of the cases have been reported from the Ogbadibo local government area of the state. According to the commissioner, some people infected with the disease are currently receiving treatment at various hospitals in the state capital, Makurdi. The commissioner says the state government has started investigations with a team of experts at the health ministry and other related agencies to establish the cause of the illness. He says that according to findings so far, symptoms of the illness include fever, abdominal pain, general body weakness, and in some cases stooling and vomiting with stains of blood. The Benue State Governor Samuel Otom is also advising residents of the affected local government area to maintain good hygiene practices and report any suspected case with similar symptoms to health authorities. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Let's now look at the latest on the coronavirus. It continues to gain fierce momentum in the United States, where hospitalizations have hit a record high of 61,000. Johns Hopkins University has added more than 200,000 new infections in the U.S., in part due to delayed counting over the weekend. The country has a tally of 10.2 million cases and nearly 240,000 people have died. Hong Kong and Singapore plan to start a travel bubble between the two cities from November the 22nd. Travelers will need to go on designated flights and take a COVID-19 test, but they won't need to quarantine and there'll be no conditions on the purpose of the trip. The scheme will start with one daily flight to each city, carrying a maximum of 200 passengers. That's planned to increase to 2 flights a day from next month. China is defending its leading vaccine from Chinese pharmaceutical giant Sinovac. Beijing says a participant's recent death during clinical trials is not related to the drug. Still, the volunteer's death prompted Brazil to suspend on Monday trials of the vaccine. Researchers have been unclear about what happened. Sao Paulo's government called the death a suicide, although it says more investigation is needed. As research seeking a COVID-19 vaccine continues across Africa, several countries have begun vaccine trials in collaboration with global pharmaceutical companies and universities. Several African states have also joined an initiative fronted by the World Health Organization to supply hundreds of millions of vaccine doses once they become available. CGTN's Robert Nagila with more on that.
As global efforts to find an effective COVID-19 vaccine are stepped up, all 54 African countries have signed up to COVAX, an initiative securing at least 220 million doses of vaccine for the continent. It's led by the World Health Organization, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunizations, and the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations. Now, 8 African countries are self-financing their vaccine doses through the COVAX facility. Separately, a number of countries on the continent have either begun vaccine trials or signed agreements for the supply of vaccine doses. South Africa has several vaccine trials underway at various stages. The first trial, in collaboration with Oxford University and the Jenner Institute, started on the 23rd of June. Another trial is in partnership with the US drug company Novavax, and a third is with pharmaceutical giant Johnson & Johnson, which has signed a deal with South African pharmaceutical company Aspen to manufacture a vaccine. In Egypt, 2 vaccine trials are underway in partnership with Chinese pharmaceutical giant Sinopharm Group. The country's leading pharmaceutical company, FACO, has also signed a deal with the Russian Direct Investment Fund to supply Egypt with 25 million doses of the Russian vaccine Sputnik V. In Kenya, the government approved clinical trials in September for a vaccine developed by AstraZeneca and Oxford University. And Uganda is set to launch its first vaccine trials in December in collaboration with the Imperial College of London.
Now let's head to North Africa. Many Egyptians have largely ignored the wearing of masks as a measure to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. The number of daily infections has jumped from 100 a day to 239 in the first 10 days of this month. The Egyptian government has taken steps to ensure citizens observe all health regulations, as Yasser Hakim reports from Cairo.
Another strong endorsement of the importance of masks by a top health official.
The mask is the best invention for 2020. It's a simple item, easy to wear, easy to handle, and take with you everywhere. But at the same time, it protects you very, very much.
The health minister has, however, warned of serious consequences in the coming months if some members of the public continue ignoring health regulations.
Studies show that from December, if we don't wear masks regularly, infections will double every week, while death rates will triple.
Her statements come after most Egyptians threw caution to the wind and failed to observe measures to curb the spread of the coronavirus.
There is no abiding by regulations at all, not in the metro underground or any form of transportation, offices or other places. The reason is that there has not been enough awareness amongst people. People started thinking the coronavirus has disappeared after the number of cases started dropping. This is dangerous.
To address the problem, the government has decided to reinforce stringent health and safety measures. It has warned that it will impose a new lockdown if COVID-19 infections continue to rise.
President Sisi has said that the health of the citizen is more important than the economy. The measures taken have an impact on the economy, but the priority is the Egyptian people.
As a sign of the government's seriousness to take action, hefty fines are being slapped on those who are not wearing masks in public transport or crowded places. And for the first time, a number of university students were temporarily suspended for violating health regulations in college. The government's policies to tackle the coronavirus early on before it reaches critical rates, similar to the ones in some European countries. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Coming up in business news. Egypt's foreign currency reserves hit $39.2 billion in October.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN. Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Egypt's central bank says foreign currency reserves have increased to $39.2 billion in October as the country continues to rebuild its forex stockpile that had taken a hit following the COVID-19 pandemic. Reserves fell by some $10 billion between March and May this year. Here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim looking at measures the Apex Bank has been taking to restock its forex reserves.
It's been a tough year for Egypt's economy, and the central bank has had to grapple with a major capital flight. The North African state lost $10 billion, accounting for about 27% of its foreign reserves in just 3 months, after the outbreak of COVID-19 hit Egypt in March.
Apart from repaying debts to lenders like the Paris Club, the money has been spent on measures to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, importing basic necessities like food items, especially after the lockdown led to a halt in production for a while. The central bank has waived a lot of debt on businesses and individuals, pumped billions of dollars as stimulus packages to manufacturers and sectors like the tourism and construction industries to survive the effects of the pandemic. It has also funded social welfare programs and provided income for the low earners and the unemployed.
Foreign savings have since gradually increased to about $40 billion in October from $35 billion in July. Major sources of hard currency from tourism and exports have tumbled because of the pandemic. So where is the central bank's money coming from to pay the bills and add to its reserves?
It's a result of successful economic reforms before the coronavirus which have managed to keep the revenue streams flowing. Supporting manufacturers and suppliers has stimulated the markets and raised purchasing power. Loans from the IMF, the World Bank and other institutions have also been important. There is a huge demand from foreign investors on the different types of bonds and treasuries sold by Egypt. These long-term loan mechanisms have raked in substantial hard currency to the central bank to rebuild its reserves.
Though foreign debt has been rising significantly, experts say it's still in the safe zone. However, come next year, officials hope foreign money would pour back again as the economy recovers, making no need for extensive borrowing. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
South Africa's elite police unit, the Hawks, has issued a warrant of arrest for the Secretary General of South Africa's ruling African National Congress. The warrant was reportedly issued for Ace Magashule, the contract awarded while he was Premier of the Free State Province. He is one of the top 6 officials of the governing ANC in charge of the day-to-day running of the party. The Nigerian government has approved a $196.7 million credit lifeline to micro, small and medium enterprises. The Survival Fund is aimed at helping small businesses overcome the adverse effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. CGTN's Deji Badmas has more on this story.
If there's one small business that really took a big hit as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, it's this mobile bakery run by military veteran Chukuma Nebedum. As a result of the lockdowns and restriction of movement, especially in the heat of the pandemic, his mobile bakery has been stationary at just one point.
We affected sales, production. We also have to reduce our production capacity too because sales dropped. So those are part of the challenges we're facing. Like if you see part of an area of the business we focus on, also aside selling, we also focus on school supplies. If you can see here, we're making production for some schools, and during the COVID period, the schools were closed. So that aspect of our business was also totally shut down too.
Like Nebedum's bakery, many of the over 40 million small businesses in Nigeria have been affected by the pandemic, losing money and laying off staff. Some have even had to shut down with no certainty of a comeback. It's why the government is now offering the almost $200 million survival fund to enable the small businesses wade through the difficult times.
Part of what kills business in Nigeria, whereby you want to get a loan from a commercial bank and you are being told that you have to pay a double-digit interest rate, which most entrepreneurs find difficult to cope. So I believe that the government, by giving a single-digit loan, is really going to help to build businesses faster. And I think it's a welcome development, and we need to commend the government for that. And we are looking forward to more stimulus packages to help SMEs in terms of regulations, in terms of policies that would favor ease of doing business.
At the last count, around 70,000 small businesses have been shortlisted for the payroll support of the scheme, which should see the government take responsibility for the staff payroll function of the shortlisted businesses for the next 3 months. The other part of the scheme, known as Guaranteed Offtake Stimulus, is expected to start soon.
I see this as part of the efforts of government to tackle the problem of unemployment, particularly of the youths.
The government says it hopes the scheme will impact 1.7 million people and save 1.3 million jobs that could be lost if the small businesses do not get the lifeline.
What I think we need to begin to look at first is the sustainability of this kind of interventions. We have so many of these interventions already, and the whole of these interventions revolve around dishing out money. Ideally, these monies are supposed to be revolving. There is no evidence that these funds are revolving, because for it to revolve, people must pay back.
For entrepreneurs like Nebedum, he says he's not looking for free funds, but something very affordable that he could pay back while growing his business.
The COVID really affected our cash flow, and that also slowed down the pace for expansion too, because ordinarily the plan was that by June 2020, that's the plan that we're going to finish setting up the second mobile bakery. But when the COVID came, funds was not sufficient enough to continue with that process. The project was kept aside. So I feel that it's not be a bad idea to also take advantage of such funds.
Until the fund comes, he's managing to keep his mobile bakery running, even though his staff strength is seriously depleted. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
The introduction of new currency notes is pulling people who have never had a bank account into Ethiopia's financial system. Since the exercise began 2 months ago, more than 1 million previously unbanked Ethiopians have handed in their 2-decade-old banknotes and in exchange opened new bank accounts from which they can draw the new ones. CGTN's Grum Chala reports.
Noure Mohammed is a young college student and a resident of Addis Ababa city. He has come to the leading state-owned commercial bank of Ethiopia to open a new saving account. This is after the introduction of the new currency, which seeks to link more people to the banking system.
So many people are now heading to the banks to open new accounts these days. I am one of those people who have never opened a savings account in a bank. Today, I will start the journey with 500 birr.
Here in one of the bank's branches, Noure must fulfill certain requirements such as provide a valid resident identification card, few copies of photographs, and of course, an initial cash saving to open his new account. All is now set and Noure has for the first time received his saving account book.
I now understand the importance of visiting a bank. Keeping money at home is risky as it can easily be stolen. Here, it is secure and I can trust the bank any day. I am so happy. I encourage people to follow my example. I have a plan to pursue a transport business and the bank has promised to provide me with loans. I am very excited.
Official sources say more than 1 million such new bank accounts have been opened by first-time bank users since the introduction of the new currency. The regulator hopes it will rope in more people to the tax net.
The National Bank of Ethiopia directive said it is a daily cash limit for individuals and the company. As a result of this, many people are opening account and transfer from one account to another account. These transactions are dominated in our branch.
Aimed at deterring cash hoarding that enables corruption and illegal trading thrive, as well as address the problem of counterfeiting, Ethiopia's government introduced the new currency in mid-September. The process has helped millions of unbanked people to start using banks for its transaction activities, and in return, billions of birrs circulating outside of the banking system have now found their way back into the economy.
This is fantastic. Previously, our peoples are cash society. They transact from in the market in any place through cash. After that, many peoples are using digital banking and fund transfer from one account to another account. So for our bank, it is a good opportunity.
As expected, Ethiopia's private banks are also benefiting from this new trend of saving in banks by citizens. Banks say the growth of cash deposits strengthens their ability to provide loans and other lending services due to the increased buffer. That has made the dreams of people like Noure one step closer to reality. Billions of the new currency, which replaced the demonetized old notes, are now circulating in the country's multi-sectoral economic activity. Many economists say the introduction of the new banknotes has brought with it better growth opportunities. Grum Chala, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead. How artists in the Central African Republic are keeping traditional music alive in a challenging environment.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes.
We now go to the Central African Republic, where we meet a group of traditional performers trying to keep their age-old culture alive. Here's the story of the Zokela Band.
It's party time in Bangui, the capital of the Central African Republic. Chuchu and his Zokela Band are serenading revelers at a local joint. Their dance is called Motengwene.
We're using this dance to distinguish ourselves a bit from our brothers in Congo, Cote d'Ivoire and Cameroon.
The Motengwene dance is an age-old move originating from the Pygmies of Central Africa. In the north of the country, it's called the bar dance. Those in the southwest call it the fish dance, and in the central region, it's identified as the savannah dance.
We tend to draw on Western music or on West African music. Young people copy other countries, but they don't know how to promote their traditional culture.
The Zokelas have been at it for 3 decades now, always adorning themselves in traditional regalia. Despite their passion and enthusiasm, the musicians still face some challenges. Artists are not well paid here. The poor economy and a history of conflict have affected the entertainment industry. But all these hurdles have not dampened their spirits. Anjamungai, CGTN.
In Kenya's informal settlement of Kibera, the rising numbers of schoolgirls falling pregnant during the COVID-19 pandemic cannot be ignored. 13-year-old journalist Sylvia Athiambo follows the story of one young mother and how local health workers are lending a helping hand.
It is 4:30 a.m. Hadija is in labor. At 17 years of age, the pain of birth is too soon for such a young soul. But she is braving it. Hadija is not her real name. As a minor, she has asked to remain anonymous. She's part of a family of 5 who call this single room home. Hadija's mother is frantically looking for transport to the nearest hospital for her young daughter. Luckily, they find a minibus, locally known as Matatu. Hadija is whisked into the maternity wing where she awaits her turn. The girl safely delivers a baby boy. The next day, she heads back home to begin the adventurous journey of motherhood. For this girl, life has taken a different turn. She's in her final year of high school. Her peers are already in school after the government eased coronavirus restrictions. As her classmates prepare for the final exams, she has assumed a new role, that of a mother.
I was worried at first, but now I'm happy because I have given birth to a baby boy without any complications.
For her mother, the thought of yet another mouth to feed leaves her a worried woman.
I don't know what to do. The mom needs to go back to school, and my income is little bit, and I'm the breadwinner of the family. I'm so confused.
Hadija is now part of the rising statistics of teenage pregnancies during the COVID-19 lockdown. With schools closed for months during the pandemic, many young people lost the support and structure that education brings to life in the slum. As a result, teenage pregnancies in Kenya became one of the most ugly social effects of the coronavirus. Generosity Women, an NGO working towards restoring women dignity in slums and rural areas in Kenya, has been playing a big role in counseling and guiding the affected girls.
We are concerned about the rising number of underage girls being pregnant. We are trying to be there for them. These are just girls who have lost direction, and it's our duty to support them. If we don't help them, then what is our purpose?
So far, 20 girls have benefited from the organization's intervention.
Our goal is to see them deliver safely, take good care of their kids, and go back to school, because they need to chase their dreams. You know, they have ambitions, and being pregnant doesn't mean that it's the end of their lives.
As breastfeeding mothers, they need a special diet such that it includes nutritious food, clean water, and most of them are lacking the basics. The mothers do not have food, they don't have some things for the babies, and we felt that it was important for us to visit them and provide them whatever little that we had.
A child now taking care of her own child. This is the situation that Hadija now finds herself in, as she contemplates a future with her baby.
I would like to go to school and work hard and have a bright future with my baby.
Many young girls in Kenya who find themselves in Hadija's shoes often don't return to school. They fall by the wayside. With poverty ravaging their households, many opt to quit school and fend for their children. This has fed into the vicious cycle of poverty that is ravaging slums like Ibera here in Kenya. But with organizations like Generosity Women, this narrative has been challenged, and many young girls like Hadija have been shown there is hope for a brighter future. Reporting for CGTN, I'm Sylvia Adhiambo.
And coming up in sports, Kenya quietly confident of upstaging Group G leaders Comoros in their 2021 AFCON qualifiers clash in Nairobi.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks,